On paper, nothing about Stephen Colbert's downfall made sense. After dominating network late night for 9 straight seasons, America's highest-rated host suddenly found himself without a future at CBS. Just days before the announcement, Colbert publicly accused his own corporate parent of paying what he called a big, fat bribe. That probably didn't help. But then Stephen Colbert, having parted ways with CBS, finally admitted why he declined Jimmy Kimmel's offer to join his show. This story gets weirder the deeper one goes. Imagine waking up to learn that the most-watched host in network late night had just lost a show. That is exactly what happened when CBS announced, on July 17, 2025, that The Late Show with Stephen Colbert would end when his contract expired in May of 2026. The announcement stunned Hollywood because Colbert was not being canceled after a ratings collapse. Quite the opposite. For 9 consecutive television seasons, The Late Show had finished as the highest-rated network late-night program, consistently outperforming NBC's The Tonight Show and ABC's Jimmy Kimmel Live. When he inherited David Letterman's desk on September 8, 2015, expectations were enormous. Letterman had hosted for more than 2 decades. Colbert, meanwhile, played a fictional conservative pundit on Comedy Central's The Colbert Report. That was not a recipe for massive success. Early on, Jimmy Fallon comfortably led the ratings race. But Colbert gradually reinvented himself. As the political climate intensified, his opening monologues became sharper and more widely discussed. By the end of the 2016 to 2017 season, Colbert had overtaken Fallon, beginning a remarkable run that would last nearly a decade. Yet when CBS explained why The Late Show was ending, it insisted the decision had nothing to do with ratings or content. Instead, the company described it as purely a financial decision, driven by the changing economics of late-night television. Traditional advertising revenue had been shrinking for years as audiences migrated to streaming platforms and social media. But was this really the cause? 3 days before the announcement, Stephen Colbert walked onto the stage and turned his attention away from politicians and rival networks. Instead, he targeted his own corporate parent. Colbert's subject was Paramount Global's decision to settle a lawsuit brought by Donald Trump over CBS News editing of a 60 Minutes interview with then Vice President Kamala Harris. Paramount agreed to pay $16 million, with the money designated for Trump's future presidential library. Trump alleged that 60 Minutes deceptively edited Harris's interview, while CBS maintained that its editing followed standard broadcast practices and denied any wrongdoing. The timing was particularly intriguing because Paramount was simultaneously pursuing a multi-billion-dollar merger with Skydance Media, a deal requiring approval from federal regulators. Settling the lawsuit gave the impression that corporate interests were taking precedence over editorial independence. Colbert wasted little time weighing in. Opening The Late Show, he told viewers, "As someone who has always been a proud employee of this network, I am offended." Referring to Paramount's settlement, Colbert called it a big, fat bribe. The audience erupted, but the remark landed differently outside the theater. It was one thing to mock a politician. It was another to accuse his own parent company of making a payment that appeared designed to smooth the path toward regulatory approval. Just 3 days later, CBS announced that The Late Show would end. Fellow comedians, including Jimmy Kimmel and Jon Stewart, publicly defended Colbert. David Letterman criticized CBS's decision. Senator Elizabeth Warren and other lawmakers questioned the circumstances. But the decision had been made. Paramount Global's proposed merger with Skydance Media was valued at roughly $8 billion. The merger involved one of the country's largest broadcast networks, one of its most influential news divisions, and government regulators whose approval was essential. Because CBS owns dozens of local television stations licensed by the federal government, the transaction required FCC review. Several high-profile events collided almost simultaneously. Trump filed a lawsuit against CBS. Paramount settled for $16 million. Colbert publicly criticized that settlement. CBS announced that Colbert's show would end. Throughout the same period, Paramount continued working toward regulatory approval of the merger. Adding to the scrutiny were comments from FCC Chairman Brendan Carr after the merger was approved. Carr said the new ownership had expressed a desire to reorient CBS News and address what they viewed as bias within the organization. Soon afterward, leadership changes accelerated inside CBS News. Longtime executives departed, including CBS News President Wendy McMahon and 60 Minutes executive producer Bill Owens. One appointment became especially controversial. Journalist Barry Weiss was selected as editor-in-chief of CBS News under the new ownership. Weiss, a former New York Times opinion editor and founder of the Free Press, has long been a polarizing figure because of her criticism of ideological conformity in major newsrooms. A late-night comedy show, a presidential lawsuit, a multi-billion-dollar merger, federal regulators, newsroom leadership changes, and fierce political debate all unfolded at the same moment. Within hours of CBS revealing that The Late Show would end, what could have been a routine corporate decision erupted into one of the largest public disputes the late-night television industry had seen in years. Jimmy Kimmel, Jon Stewart, Seth Meyers, and other comedians quickly defended their longtime colleague. Kimmel became one of Colbert's most vocal allies. Rather than airing a fresh episode of Jimmy Kimmel Live opposite Colbert's farewell, Kimmel chose to broadcast a rerun instead, encouraging viewers to spend the evening watching Colbert's final show. It was an extraordinary gesture. Later, Jimmy Kimmel revealed that he had invited Stephen Colbert to become one of the rotating celebrity guest hosts on Jimmy Kimmel Live during his annual summer hiatus. For most television personalities, it would have been the perfect way to stay in the spotlight while deciding what came next. But Colbert quietly declined. Speaking to Variety, Kimmel explained that Colbert simply felt it was too soon. Colbert chose to disappear from the late-night spotlight almost as suddenly as he had been forced to leave it. Kimmel, however, made one thing unmistakably clear. The invitation wasn't a one-time offer. Anytime you want to host, he said, I'll gladly step aside. This gesture was not offered in a vacuum. Behind the nightly ratings battles, late-night hosts had increasingly become allies navigating an industry that was changing faster than ever before. Kimmel understood those pressures firsthand. Like Colbert, he had spent years turning his opening monologues into some of television's sharpest political commentary. Their public feud with Trump became one of the defining rivalries between a president and late-night television hosts. Colbert's relationship with Trump was arguably even more intense. After Trump's election, Colbert leaned heavily into political satire, frequently dedicating large portions of his monologues to the White House, congressional investigations, and Trump's legal battles. The strategy transformed his program into appointment viewing. Trump responded over the years with repeated attacks on Truth Social, calling Colbert boring and talentless. Instead, the ratings climbed. This made Colbert's eventual cancellation all the more surprising. Kimmel's own experience also gave him a unique perspective on what Colbert was going through. In September 2025, ABC abruptly suspended production of Jimmy Kimmel Live after a monologue in which he discussed the assassination of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. Contrary to many headlines, Kimmel did not joke about or celebrate Kirk's death. Instead, his criticism was directed at what he described as efforts by some MAGA figures to immediately politicize the killing. Nevertheless, the remarks triggered an immediate political firestorm. The backlash quickly escalated beyond social media and into the corporate world, eventually leading ABC to suspend the show indefinitely. More than 400 actors, comedians, writers, and producers signed an ACLU-backed open letter condemning the suspension as an attack on free expression. Even conservatives who disagreed with Kimmel's politics publicly defended his right to say what he believed. Meanwhile, President Trump celebrated ABC's decision, while FCC Chairman Brendan Carr publicly criticized Kimmel's comments. Just 6 days later, ABC reversed course. The company announced that after thoughtful conversations with Kimmel, Jimmy Kimmel Live would return to the air. Kimmel addressed the controversy head-on upon his return. Fighting back tears, he told viewers, "It was never my intention to make light of the murder of a young man." He thanked supporters from across the political spectrum, saying he was especially grateful to people who disagreed with his views but defended his right to express them anyway. This episode reflects the increasingly precarious landscape for political satire in 2025 and 2026, as late-night hosts navigate not only traditional censorship pressures, but also the weaponization of corporate consolidation against outspoken talent. A trend watchdog groups like the Knight First Amendment Institute have flagged as a growing threat to editorial independence across media conglomerates. Long before Stephen Colbert became the most recognizable face in American late-night television, his life was forever changed by tragedy. On September 11, 1974, 10-year-old Stephen was at home in Charleston, South Carolina, when Eastern Airlines Flight 212 crashed while attempting to land in Charlotte. On board were his father, Dr. James Colbert, and his two older brothers, Peter and Paul. The aircraft struck trees just short of the runway, killing 72 of the 82 people aboard. Decades later, he would describe the event as something that became part of him forever. Colbert has often credited his mother, Lorna Colbert, with holding the family together after the crash. In a widely discussed 2019 conversation with Anderson Cooper, who had also experienced devastating family loss, Colbert reflected that he had learned to be grateful for the thing I wish had not happened, explaining that suffering had deepened his empathy. Before network television came calling, Colbert built his reputation in political satire. After studying at Chicago's famed Second City, he joined The Daily Show under Jon Stewart in 1997. In October 2005, Comedy Central launched The Colbert Report, where he played an exaggerated, self-important conservative television pundit. The brilliance of the character lay in its commitment. Colbert never broke the illusion. Perhaps no moment better demonstrated his willingness to court controversy than the White House Correspondents' Dinner on April 29, 2006. Standing just feet away from President George W. Bush, Colbert delivered a blistering satirical speech that mocked the Iraq War and the relationship between government and the press. The room responded with uncomfortable silence, but the speech quickly spread online. When David Letterman retired, CBS handed The Late Show to a comedian best known for portraying a fictional character. On September 8, 2015, Colbert debuted as himself. The transition was not immediate, but as Trump's political rise reshaped American public life, Colbert's nightly monologues became increasingly central to the national conversation. Since leaving CBS, Colbert has announced no return to late-night television and has not signed a confirmed deal with any streaming platform or rival network. While rumors of podcasts and new shows continue to circulate, nothing has been officially announced. Instead, Colbert appears to be focusing on projects outside the nightly talk show format. A lifelong fan of J.R.R. Tolkien, he is serving as an executive producer on The Lord of the Rings, The Hunt for Gollum. His departure also reflects a broader crisis facing network late night. Despite leading the ratings for 9 consecutive seasons, Colbert became another casualty of an industry struggling with declining advertising revenue, rising production costs, and growing competition from streaming services, podcasts, YouTube, and social media. CBS continues to insist the cancellation was purely a financial decision. Yet the timing continues to fuel debate. What seems clear is that Stephen Colbert's exit marks the end of an era, not just for one host, but for a model of late-night television that may never return. Well, that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Did you like this video? If you did, please consider liking, dropping a comment, and hitting the subscribe button so that you don't miss out on our new uploads. Also, don't miss this video you see on your screen right now. It's truly unbelievable.